This year, Apple's rumored to release a lot of new smart home devices, from wall-mounted displays to doorbell cameras, which means this might be a really good year to start using HomeKit. And in this video, I'll explain everything you need to know, starting with, well, what is HomeKit? The simple answer is, HomeKit is an app made by Apple to help you control your smart home accessories. But of course, it's not that simple. Something really good, but also kind of bad about Apple HomeKit is it uses its own protocol, which is basically a fancy way of saying it uses its own Bluetooth frequency that nobody else uses, making it hard for other devices like headphones to interfere with or someone to hack into your HomeKit system. Apple actually has a team that checks for every smart home device that wants to be on the Apple HomeKit protocol to make sure it's safe for its customers. Of course, this is good because that means your products are very safe and end-to-end encrypted. But this is bad because that means your devices are very limited on what you can choose. Over the last few years, Apple's been releasing their products with what's called Matter over Thread support, which is the new industry standard for smart home devices. It's end-to-end encrypted, so it's still very safe, but it's the new industry standard, so it's what most companies are starting to head towards. This means you'll be able to add more and more devices to HomeKit as time goes on. With that being said, a good thing to follow is make sure that any device you get on the box says works with HomeKit, just to be safe. Okay, before you go buying a bunch of HomeKit accessories, there's one thing you need to know about: HomeKit hubs and bridges. A hub is the very first thing you want to buy for your smart home because it acts as the brain of your smart home. Although you can connect your HomeKit devices to just your iPhone over Wi-Fi, this is very limiting because you can only connect your devices when your phone is on the same Wi-Fi. Apple has a few options for hubs like Apple TV and HomePods, but just be aware the cheapest Apple TV and the first generation HomePod doesn't have Thread support, so it'll be compatible with less devices. Apple's also rumored to give us a new wall-mounted display this year built for HomeKit, which I'm sure will be a HomeKit hub, but that's just rumors, so we'll see what they give us. Let's say I use this HomePod as my hub. This HomePod is always connected to my Wi-Fi, which means all my Apple devices can always communicate with it. So now if I'm away and I want to turn the heat up in my home, I can actually do that in the app. Once I turn the heat up in the Home app on my iPhone, it'll actually send it to my Home hub, which is connected to the same Wi-Fi as my thermostat, turning the thermostat on. With HomeKit, almost everything talks to your hubs, which is usually pretty fast. But sometimes your Wi-Fi might be a little slow, so your commands you give out might take a little bit longer. And that's where Thread support comes in. Thread is kind of like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and each Thread-supported device talks to each other, which makes your HomeKit devices a lot faster. For example, without using Thread support, if I send a command to my HomePod, the HomePod will send that command to the Wi-Fi router, and then the Wi-Fi router will send the command to the device. But with devices that have Thread support, your hub will skip over the Wi-Fi router and just send it directly to the device. The really cool thing is each Thread device actually communicates with each other, so the more Thread devices you have, the faster your HomeKit's going to be. Something a little similar to this would be a bridge. My Lutron switches don't connect straight to the app. Instead, you have to get a bridge, which at first is kind of a pain because it's one more thing you have to buy, but it's actually a lot better. Most bridges connect straight to your Wi-Fi router using Ethernet, then they have their own protocol to talk to their devices. So when I make a command to turn the lights off, it gets sent to my router and instantly sent to the bridges so the bridge can quickly talk to the devices it's supporting. If you have an Apple TV, go to Settings. And in AirPlay and HomeKit, make sure your TV is set up with HomeKit. And if you have HomePods, once you go through the setup process on your HomePod, it should show up in the HomeKit app. Alright, now that we have a HomeKit hub, we can look at the HomeKit app, which has a few controls on the top and a few controls on the bottom. On the top, you have Intercom, Add, and Settings. The bottom is pretty self-explanatory. On the home, you've got all your devices, then the automation obviously shows all your automations you've made, and then the Discover tab, it's pretty useless, it's just a way to find new automations. The intercom feature is more used if you have a lot of HomePods around your house, and it actually lets you record your voice and then send it to all the HomePods, which I don't know if a lot of people use this, but I guess it's kind of a cool feature to have. Then we have the Add button, which lets you customize and share your home. For example, you can add your accessories by clicking the button, then scanning the HomeKit code on your accessory. Or you can add rooms, new homes, and people if you have other Apple ID that you want to give access to the entire app. Now for the fun part, let's actually talk about scenes and automations. This is what actually makes smart homes fun to get into. I have plenty of automations, like this automation that turns the lights on in my pantry whenever I turn on the pantry door. Or this scene I have on my phone that actually turns off all the lights in our house except for the ones under the cabinet and turns on our TV. We call this the movie scene. An automation is basically a series of events that occur when something triggers it. For example, going back to my pantry, anytime the contact sensor separates, it triggers the automation and tells my pantry to turn the lights on. But a scene is something that you yourself trigger. Like when I press this button on my phone or just say movie time, that tells my hubs to set all the lights to off except these few lights that I keep on when I watch a movie. There's a lot you can do in the Home app. Maybe comment down below some scenes and automations that you've come up with, and I'll make sure to link the hubs that Apple sells so you can get started on your smart home.